Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We do business for just about 30 minutes before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. I'm Amy John McCall. We start with the performance of the Naira at the close of trade yesterday. We see an inverse relation between NAFEX and NAFEM. So while NAFEX gained 3 Naira to close at 1,661 Naira 51 kobo, that's NAFEX. We saw that for NAFEM, that was on the inverse. It lost 0.61%. A lot of people have said this is the first loss in the month of November, but does it make a whole lot of difference? We've been hovering around 1,006 for a bit now, getting close to 1,007 after losing the 1,005 about 3 weeks or so ago. So we saw a drop right there for NAFEM. It lost 10 Naira 18 kobo, and we know this is the major market when we talk about the official market. Anticipating perhaps intervention from the central bank, that is one. Remember that the World Bank had asked the CBN to be more certain concerning its interventions. So sometimes we see the CBN looks at the market and intervenes, and other times they decide not to intervene. Perhaps a bit of certainty will also help interactions in the market and accumulation of FX in the country. Now, what Kayla and NT were talking about is the biggest news in the country at this time, especially because it concerns energy. Energy security is a major one. But first of all, let's start from the global space and tell you that oil prices traded in a narrow range on Tuesday ahead of what is expected to be an exceptionally close United States presidential election. Today is the D-Day for the U.S. when they will choose their next president. So for the oil, after rising more than 2% in the previous session as OPEC Plus delayed plans to hike production in December. Look at the numbers right here. We've seen a bit of gain on Brent. So remember about this time yesterday it was at 74. So it gained, and then now we see it dropped 0.04%, $75.05 a barrel, while WTI is down 0.06% at $71.43 a barrel. So the U.S. election is the big deal today. Still, risk-taking remains limited with a very busy one. Federal Reserve meeting also this week. China's National People's Congress meeting is also this week. You know, more information about the stimulus is what we are expecting. So for now, the polls suggest that the United States presidential race will be closely contested, and any delay in election result or even disputes could pose near-term risks for broader markets or dragging them for longer. We've seen traders exhibiting a lot of uncertainty, you know, because of this tightness. There seems to be no clear winner at this time, even from the polls. So that makes it really hard for investors. And then back here in Nigeria, we've seen yesterday that Dangote Refinery, they reacted to what they describe as misinformation by the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, as well as the Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association, that's Petron, on the price of PMS imported into the country. In a statement signed by the Group Chief Branding and Communications Officer, Mr. Anthony Chejina, Dangote Refinery challenged claims by several bodies that they can land PMS at a cheaper price, raising concerns about possible importation of substandard products and connivance with international traders to dump low-quality products into the country. Dangote Refinery says post deregulation, the NNPC set the pace of selling PMS to domestic marketers at 971 Naira for a litre for sale into ships and 990 Naira for sale into trucks, which set the benchmark for their pricing at 960 Naira for a litre for ships, while maintaining 990 into the litre for sale into trucks. Now, there's been a reaction to that from Petron, that's the Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria. They're disputing that allegation made by Dangote Refinery that its marketers intend to import standard petrol products at a cheaper rate. In a statement released, the association says that it has concluded plans with its foreign refinery counterparts and financial partners to import the best quality of PMS and then sell for far less and the present selling price pressure, and adds that it plans to enter into the market before December, pending the approval of an import permit license. I think they call it petrol. That's what they intend to call it. So awaiting that. Now, let's delve into this and try to understand. I know you heard part of this conversation with Mr. Isele right there on Sunrise Daily, but let's look at the business angle, perhaps more details right now with the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewane. Joins us to understand what's going on, because at the end of the day, it does seem like the consumers are just there getting hit from one side or the other. As Mr. Isele said, businesses are there to make money. So who is covering or protecting the interests of the consumer in all of this? Mr. Rewane, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
So it does seem like there's no end to this issue of quality of petroleum products, pricing of it, and now petrol is telling us that they can get it cheaper. Dangote is saying, well, consumers beware, you might just be trading quality for pricing. I mean, what do you know about this? Can you help us to understand the full scenario?
First of all, let me state clearly that there's no controversy here. There's a complete misconception of price and cost. The cost of producing a product and the price at which you sell it may not be exactly the same and will never be the same. There's a cost plus margin, which anybody who is producing has to produce at a point where its marginal cost equals its marginal revenue. That is standard economics. Secondly, you do not expect in an industry of this nature, where there's about a $25 to $27 billion investment in a refinery, for that refinery, which has capacity for 650,000 barrels a day, to be the price follower. The price leader in that industry is the man who has a dominant position. And in this case, the Dangote refinery has about a 90 to 95% market share. Therefore, they will be the price leader. The 100 cannot be the price follower. And let us get that clear. That is the issue. The issue is that let us not forget that a year ago or 2 years ago, people were queuing up. There was no quantity, there was no quality, there was no supply, and there was uncertainty and anxiety. Somebody has invested $25 to $27 billion over the past 5-6 years, taking risks, sovereign risk, credit risk, market risk, currency risk, and now decides to set up to actually establish a price. And he's the price leader. The other guys who are importing as price followers, and it's dependent on whether we do not know what the source of that, where the products are coming from. And we do not know the intent of whoever is dumping on the Nigerian market. So let's establish one thing clearly. One is that there is a cost of doing business. Two, there's a format for a template for determining the price. And three, there's a market share which determines who is the price leader and who is the price follower. I think that has to be. Yes. All
right. So this issue of imported, I mean, and I know it shows even in the real sector, imported products being cheaper than domestically refined products. That I think is a worrying factor, because even though on the face level we might see the price is is cheaper for imported products, then we now talk about the pressure on the naira. We just saw the naira; it keeps losing value. We're now heading to 1,700.
No, I think that's currencies by nature, and currency market is a volatile market. There are many things that goes into determining what the value of the currency is, whether it's misaligned temporarily or it's misaligned almost structurally. So the question is that in that price of petrol, or PMS as we call it, there is the cost of price of oil, there's the exchange rate at which it's exchanged, and finally there are market structures and logistics of moving stuff from the refinery to the market. That has to be established. And one thing I want to bring to the attention of all the viewers here is that the price of diesel, which is a major factor in that is a contributing factor for inflation in the country. The price of diesel was as high as 1,900 about a year ago. The Dangote Refinery was able to produce diesel and bring it down to 900. It's now at about 1,100 naira. The diesel price is deregulated. The market is open for everybody. And none of these marketers or born-again patriots had actually come to complain when the price of diesel was brought down because of the intervention of the refinery. I think that let's establish that clearly. Now, there is a crisis of false expectation. People thought that and kept on saying that when the Dangote refinery is commissioned, the world, the night will become day and day will become night. That is not the truth. Only two things were guaranteed by the refinery working. One, quality of the products. Two, quantity. What the Dangote refinery or any other refinery for that matter, including Warri Refinery, Port Harcourt and others, they cannot guarantee you price because the price is not controlled by them. The price is determined by factors which include oil price, exchange rate, and other things. So what we are getting is cost plus margin, and what we are getting is quantity guaranteed. What we are getting is quality guaranteed. What we cannot determine and what the producer cannot determine is the price at which you sell, because that is outside their control. However, having said that, if the cost is higher than the price, then that creates a subsidy. If the price is higher than the cost, that gives you a margin. And that's how the business, and this business is a high volume, low margin business all over the world. And that's how refineries are run.
All right, Mr. Rewane, help us to understand the status of subsidy. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, what should the regulator be doing? Because I believe the regulator is the one who should be speaking for consumers in the midst of these businessmen's conversations.
Well, first and foremost, basic economic rules are that subsidies are reverse taxes. If you increase subsidies, you reduce the tax on the people. If you reduce subsidies, you increase the tax. There are certain fundamental rules of taxation, but you need tax, right, to run the country. And therefore, if you take away, as we have said, with the subsidies have been reduced, it means that the government revenue has increased. Now the question is, what has the government done with that money that it has received? Now, and that's a question of morality, it's a question of governance, it's a question of transparency. So, and that's not the issue today, is that subsidies are not afforded. Nigeria cannot afford the subsidies and have to do something about it. But at the same time, Nigeria cannot afford for subsidy revenues to be filtered away or stolen or misappropriated. So you have two things. One, subsidies that are being removed, and two, the subsidies and the revenues that have accrued to the government, how is it being used or how is it being blocked from being stolen? So those are the things. So if you want to bring in a question of subsidies into the question of pricing and cost of production of refined products, it clouds the air and makes the discussion more complex than it should be. So I like to separate the issue of what is the cost of producing a liter of petrol and what is the price at which we will sell the petrol, and what is the exchange rate at which the importers are bringing. When you address all of these issues, you come up with what we call a cost-efficient price.
So now the other issue in the economy at this time, Mr. Rewane, would like for you to help us understand is the issue of the tax reform bill. Unfortunately, it seems to have turned into a regional conversation. The northern governors are asking that the tax reform be withdrawn. And then the tax reform is actually supposed to bring up a more transparent and efficient tax system in the country. But I mean, the conversation these days, but we've heard the presidency now say that, I mean, they're not going to withdraw it and all of it. Let's just try to understand a bit of it, which is the proposed reforms, Mr. Rewane. The statutory now is that for value-added tax, you have for 2024 supposed to be 7.5%. From next year, implementation was supposed to start in January. Now we don't know the status. It's supposed to get up to 10%, and then 2026 to 2029, 12.5, and 2030, 15. Then the company income tax, which is at 30 now, is supposed to go down to 25, and further down in 2026 to 25%, and all of that. So help us to understand. I think we have another slide on the controversy. If we could have that slide before Mr. Rewane would react to it. On the controversy, this objective 0% VAT on food and education. And Mr. Oyedele has been on our program, various programs, a couple of times, explaining how they're supposed to make the basics to have less VAT. You know, these are the basics that people need to live on. And so we said, but we have the controversy. Can we see the one on the controversy that seems to be raising all of the dust that we've been having in the country? There you have it. So controversies around VAT. Federal government currently gets 15%. They're proposing 10%. State governments get 50%. Now state governments are supposed to get even more. Local governments get 35%. That's supposed to stay. And out of the 90% of subnational, 60% is supposed to be shared on derivative, where consumption to place, while 40% to be shared based on fact sharing. In essence, what this is supposed to do is let's trace the source of the revenue and let that state get even more, unlike what we have now, where everything is sent to the center and then everybody gets some kind of equal share. So Mr. Rewane, please help us to understand what's the problem with this? What's the controversy? What are some of the pros and cons of it?
Well, Pini, the point is there that two things are certain in life, and they say, economists say, death and taxes. Those are the only two things that you cannot change. At the end of your life, somebody dies. At the end of earning your income, you pay your tax. Those are the two things that are certain. Now, taxation is a controversial issue. There are what we call the canons of taxation. But the reality here is that, one, the burden of taxation, the incidence of tax, rests somewhere. And what these proposals are saying is that the burden of tax on people actually reduces because you are paying less at the end of the day, both at the corporate level, the individual level, and the various incentives, right? But the reality is that the lower the tax rate, the higher the compliance rate. That is, people pay more because the incidence of tax is lower. Secondly, if people see that the money that they are paying as taxation is used efficiently, there's an incentive to pay. So we are dealing with a couple of things. Let us first of all start by saying that the VAT, the exemptions are so much that people, the ordinary man, will pay less, and that is what the tax reform is saying. Two, that the federal government that was taking 15% of all the taxes collected, of all the VAT collected, is now going to get only 10%. Three is that it doesn't just go to the states, it goes to the federal government, the local governments. And so the question is, how much are they going to collect? And the most important part of this reform is that VAT today, if Nigerian breweries is producing beer in Lagos and sends out the beer to Kaduna or to Port Harcourt, the VAT is, in the original policy, the VAT accrues to Lagos State, not to where the consumer is. This new proposal says that the VAT is going to go to the state where it's consumed, and that is where the man who is buying it is. He's the one that bears the burden of the tax, and he should get the benefit of the tax derivation. So what it means, therefore, is that Nigerian breweries or Guinness or Dangote will send out invoices, to their distributors. And from the address of the distributor, you know exactly the state where that consumption is taking place. So this is a much more efficient, more equitable, fairer, and easier to administer tax, the way it is being proposed. Therefore, there's no reason, as a matter of fact, there's no reason why the states should go against it. I think there's a lack of understanding or lack of communication of the true objective and the process itself. So I believe that when this is understood fully, right, then there'll be what I call a compromise, not even a compromise. There'll be an alignment of goals, right, and strategy. Don't forget, an objection is a request for further information. The objection which the state governors and the NEC have, they objected to it and said, okay, President Tinubu, please withdraw it. Now it's up to President Tinubu and his team to give further information. So like I always say, an objection is a request for further information. When the information is available, people will now agree and be aligned. And at the end of the day, everybody will benefit from it because these taxation principles are there. And another thing you must note is that under the proposal, whatever you acquire, if you acquire any assets, say for example, a telecom company acquires generators and all of that for its base stations, he is allowed to recover all of this. He will get all of these things back. So ordinarily, he would have paid a VAT of say 10%. He gets everything back. It becomes zero because he gets that capital allowance for acquiring that asset. Now, and what does that mean? It means that a telecom company that has spent so much, right, acquiring assets and capital spend, and at this time is not allowed or has not been given the freedom to alter its tariffs, will have that as one of the benefits. And I come back to the other issue when it comes to taxation. You can alter the tax policy, but the government must allow the guys who are producing these services, especially the telco companies, to alter and be able to charge appropriately their tariffs. Because right now, if you look at the results that are being issued across all sectors, almost everybody is reporting massive foreign exchange losses. This cannot continue because the tax you pay corporate income tax on profits, not on losses. Therefore, the corporate income tax that will be collected this year for 2023 and next year for 2024 is going to be much, much lower. And that will actually impede the government's ability to fund transactions, to fund their activities and provide welfare for the Nigerian people. So it's very important that we know this.
Yeah, so and I see that one of the plans of the reform is a reduction in a company income tax so that profits will be higher and then companies can thrive better. But you did allude to the fact that perhaps what we need is more enlightenment, the media and all of that. So I guess at this time, even though the president has insisted that the reform bill will not be withdrawn, it's now left to the committee, the Tayo Oyedele committee, to go around and try to get the buy-in, perhaps help them to understand some of these things more. I guess that's where we should be at this time.
No, to be honest, I think the sensationalism of the journalists saying that the president will not withdraw the bill and trying to create a conflict where there's none. Like I said, an objection is a request for further information. The governors have a right to say, look, we do not understand this. Can you explain it further? The president has a responsibility to explain it further and to let people know what the benefits are. If it has not been well communicated, then communicate it again and keep on saying it again until everybody understands, because that's the responsibility of leadership. And that's one. Two, the president and his team have to understand clearly that people want to be sure that when the revenues are collected, it is not filtered away, it is not wasted, it is not spent on things that will not benefit the people. So there are two things here. One, communicate the tax reform. Two, ensure that the monies that are being received from taxation are being judiciously spent for things that people can see, because there is a definite correlation between when people see that their money is being well used, there's an incentive to pay taxes. When people see that the money that is being paid is not being judiciously used, there is an incentive to evade tax, avoid tax, in fact, or just what we call filter, keep your money with yourself rather than to be non-compliant and maliciously obedient.
I think another interesting part, Mr. Rewane, is where the new process, the reform is supposed to help the recoup of VAT, the refund on VAT to be faster and maybe more transparent. I think that's also another interesting part that could be highlighted for acceptance.
No, I didn't get that question clearly.
One of the reform is supposed to help the refund of VAT or VAT to be faster and less bureaucracy around it. I guess that's another part that could make the reform attractive or as an incentive for paying taxes.
Yes, again, like I keep on saying, the fundamental principles of taxation, as far back as the time of Adam Smith, were very clear. Taxes have to generate revenue. They have to be easy to administer. They have to be neutral in terms of allocation of resources, and they have to be equitable. That is, the rich should pay more than the poor. But the reality in life is that the taxes that are what we call the benefit approach, where you pay as you receive the benefit, like in VAT, or you pay the tax at the supermarket and all of that. Those ones, the same amount, I will pay the same tax as my driver, and the same thing, Bill Gates will pay the same level of taxation, and no matter how rich Bill Gates is or how poor I am compared to Bill Gates. So we pay the same tax, but it's easy to administer. If you have to, actually measure and say that you are going to charge Bill Gates so much and charge me so much, it is so difficult to administer, and you will spend half of your time administering it rather than generating revenue. So the easy thing to do is to apply it across board, but also to insist that the money that is collected for taxation is used for the benefit of the vulnerable rather than for the benefit of the wealthy. But having said that, I think that we should not confuse a revenue problem for a growth problem. Nigeria has more of a growth investment problem than a revenue problem. Revenue you can use to pay your cost, you can use that to amortize people, you can use it to incentivize investors. But really, the problem is that the Nigerian economy is underperforming today because its potential GDP actually is higher than its real GDP growth rate. And that's an abstract economic principle that we have to discuss. But for today, and the purpose of this discussion, we are talking about taxes, we are talking about subsidies, which are reverse taxes, we are talking about efficient pricing of petroleum products, the Dangote Refinery as an example, and we're also talking about allowing the telcos to actually have freedom to increase their tariffs and let it be market, cost efficient, and allow them to invest in the technology, because every time they invest in capex, 5G and all the other things, AI technology, productivity increases. And when there's an increase in output of goods and services, then you have a fighting chance to bring inflation down. Inflation is the real problem that is confronting this country today.
Yeah, inflation is the real problem. We keep fighting it. Just before we let you go, Mr. Rewane, could you bring us up to speed on what's going on with commodities? Christmas is around the corner. We see palm oil. Something seemed unmoved. Palm oil, semovita, new yam, but sugar is up. Wheat. Could you give us what's going on behind the scenes for commodities, domestic commodities, that is?
Yes, commodities. The problem now is that Christmas is in about 5 weeks from now. And we are seeing a couple of things. One, the import duty waiver, the goods are just coming in, and there's some bureaucracy at the ports. But we're still seeing rice at 120,000. We're seeing flour at 65,000. We are seeing, we are seeing beans up. We are also seeing the new yam is flat at 3,000. And semovita is flat at 6,700. So the yellow is 6,700, but the actual price is about 16,500. Palm oil is flat at 37,500. Actually, the palm oil price is flat at 37,500. Sorry. So that is where we are. With commodity prices, there are seasonal factors. The Christmas is here. The duty waiver is here. And then the logistics of moving the products to the market, which is driven by the price of petrol on one hand, but more importantly by the price of diesel. So what do we see? We think that all things considered, we do not see the price of these commodities reducing during the Christmas period, which is the month of December. So what I think is going to happen is that the federal government will probably extend the date of the duty waiver, which was January 1, for another month or two to allow people bring in the products, bring down the prices. And then what happens normally after Christmas and New Year is that prices begin to come down. So if you are somebody who is looking at the long term, I wouldn't buy the turkey or the chicken for Christmas. I'll wait and buy after Christmas. So probably you will have a happy after Christmas and a kind of sober before Christmas.
Mr. Rewane, I don't know how you convince the children to do that, to wait until after Christmas before you buy the chicken or the turkey. I'm not sure you hear the last of it. Well, thank you so much for your time and your views on the program this morning, Mr. Bismarck Rewane.
2020, different year. 2024 is a different year.
Okay, all right. We're looking forward to that. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so just before we head out, yesterday the negative sentiment continued at the NGX. The market was down, lost over 300 billion naira and losing both the 97,000 level and the 59 trillion level. So it was a red market yesterday. Aradel contributed a whole lot to this, even though O&O also added, but profit taking still hasn't ended on Aradel. But the good thing is, still in the oil and gas sector, a company just shot up, and we see it since last week. It's been doing the top trades. That's Unicel. Unicel is a domestic company, thank God for that, and they're into oil production and all of that. And we just see interest around it. I guess we have to investigate, are they connected to Dangote or Aradel? We have to find out. But top trades yesterday, we see Cornhall and UBA, Sterling, Nigeria all also. But it was a red market. We hope to see a bit of recovery, perhaps, since prices have dropped. Some investors will want to take advantage or take position for that. Will is back. That's good to know. So you see her give you update from the market at 1 p.m. So she'll be here at 1 p.m. with Ladi Williams. They'll be doing 55 minutes of business with you. I'll be doing behind the scene. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.